Welcome back to Simpler Games channel. I'd like to share with you another item. This is, believe it or not, a PlayStation 2 system. This board comes out of a development tower. Take a look at it. Compared to my hand, it's a pretty big board and has unusual form factor. So let's start off by looking at the different areas of the board. What we have here is the motion engine and the other processor. And they are actually bolted through the main board. The heat sinks, sort of like Xbox 360, they do have a retention mechanism on the other side because the heat sinks are quite thin and the fans do spin quite fast and loudly. If you take a look here, this is the CD-DVD drive controlling circuit. What's really unusual about it is that it has quite a few chips on it. You've got the actual controller chip, you've got servo chips, and some other chips on here, as well as quite a bit of power circuitry. I don't know why it's so overbuilt, but that's how it is. And it connects via these three cables. Actually, there's 6 cables that connect to this. And this is the primary ribbon interface for the drive. If we pop this off, it'll give us a better view of what's underneath here. So I'm going to pop this off. And as you can see, it has a large push connector, double-sided, and underneath it is yet another controller, this time for the bus. And as you can see, it has traces that lead from this module here to the processor and also to these extra connectors over here. This brick over here, I shouldn't say brick, but this module over here has an IDE interface on it for a hard drive. And it also has a slot for a PCMCIA card, which is utilized on the early PlayStation 2 in Japan. They didn't have a drive bay for hard drives, they had a PCMCIA connector, and you use an external hard drive. So, over here we have a voltage regulator module, quite beefy one, with encapsulated logic. Underneath it, some more chips. This seems to feed directly into the memory and other critical devices, and it's quite a bit of components. And if there's one thing for sure, is that the PlayStation 2 development board here is uses a ton of power, seems to be a bit over-engineered as far as power, and it seems a little bit inefficiently designed. Originally, PlayStation 2 started out as like a rack design, and this sort of semi-condensed down, and I believe, just going by personal hunch, that all these components were designed around the final design of the PS2 tool rather than the actual components itself. Sort of like a aesthetic over design, because if you open up a PS2 tool, it's quite a nightmare of cables and everything. So let's take a look over here, and these are the connectors for the CPU and the GS, the motion engine, and the other graphics processor. And if I can get these damn things out, here we go. You'll also notice that underneath here, there's an awful lot of dead space on this board. I mean, this is all unused PCB, and that's because all of this is stuck up underneath. I believe the power supply and the hard drives, hence this large plastic shielding, so that it doesn't get zapped. In the corner here we do have the Linux host serial port, which is what controls this whole board. This whole board is connected by a serial port for commands. So let's put this back here, and we'll take a look at some more of the features on the board here real quick. You'll notice to the left of the processor is a few shiny little chips. So these chips here are actually the memory for the main board. For the PS2 side, it's the memory, and it's quite shockingly not cooled or covered in any way. The memory on the PlayStation 2 at the time was pretty expensive memory, and you would think that they would possibly cover it a little bit better to prevent damage, but it is just plain old memory chips with a epoxy cap on it of some sorts, or protective cap on it, and nothing much more. I'm going to unmount the camera now. This one has mounting for a heatsink, but it has no heatsink, strangely enough. It is a Sony controller chip, CXD 9553GB. Now that we're in macro mode, you can take a look here at the board. And some motion engine IOP resistors and other stuff on here. What they do for tool, emulator, the drive, and the Linux host side. You can see the memory here a little bit better. You'll notice that it's a lot like almost like a coating on it, but it's not really a bare core. It's like a ceramic package, quite unusual. I guess it has enough heat dissipation that it doesn't need a heatsink or anything. There's no mounting on the boards or anything for covering the RAM. And this is the IDE interface, as well as several other things like the video out is on this subboard here. If you take a look at the side, you have the PC MCIA card slot. This was used to connect a hard drive, external hard drive, and network connector. And this is for the PS2 side. The Linux host had all this stuff built into it. This is more for the PS2 side. The Japanese first generation of PS2 didn't have a bay like the American drive did, or I should say the American PS2 did for hard drives. It had a PC MCIA connector, and you used an external connector, and as a result, there are quite a few USB, FireWire, and other external modems necessary for the first gen PS2 so you can get online, because the PC MCIA port was filled by the hard drive and you would have to get your connectivity elsewhere. Familiar AV multi-out, but something you're not really used to seeing on a PS2, which is VGA out and S-Video in and digital out. The back of the board is pretty unremarkable, but I'll flip it over. The back of the board is nothing really special. You'll notice it has the retention mechanism for the motion engine, but it has none for the other CPU. Numerous grounding clips and just some little extra controller chips. Sadly, PlayStation 2 development systems seem very prone to breakage. Quite a few people get them damaged in shipping because the parts just tend to break free. And as you can see, a lot of things like the DVD controller board are just connected by a few screws and, you know, sort of rather clumsy connectors. They're not very robustly built, and they do quite easily break. This board works, but unfortunately the system that it came in, the backplane was damaged and rendered everything else useless. However, this board is leaving and going to someone else who needs a main board because that part broke. So there is quite a bit of salvageability, but it's a little bit sad to see such a beautiful system reduced to parts just because of poor design. But you know, the PS2 tool, if you've seen some of my other videos, you know that it was primarily an exercise of design and prestige by Sony, and that it was more substance and more style than substance. I'm sure they could have built a PS2 dev system for quite a bit less money if they had just made it a bland, boring box like most other developers do. And actually, in fact, that's exactly what they did with PS3. The PS3 dev system, instead of being a beautiful shaped system, it's just a big black square box. So much for the design aesthetic of development systems. And actually, the PS2 tool is probably the most beautiful development system ever made, hands down. Try to get some more videos out when I can. Thanks for watching. See you next time.